We're going to move on to our next speaker now. All right. Our next speaker is going to talk about the constitutional aspects of Bitcoin. We're going to get legal here on Bitcoin. Okay. Our next speaker is a legal director for Farcove Consulting. He's a crypto lawyer and an author. And the book's called Fintech, Law and First Principles. And he's also a law professor that wrote academic papers on Bitcoin as free money and Bitcoin as a reserve asset and sustainable mining. So let's give a big round of applause for Mr. Rafael Padilla.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just some clarification. We actually shifted the subject of my presentation from constitutional aspects of Bitcoin to something that might be more relevant, because since we are here in Boracay, and I think observing our Bitcoin retreat since yesterday, seems to me that an elephant in the room is the subject of the environmental impact or consequences of Bitcoin. This has been somehow mentioned in previous presentations, but I thought I could also focus on this subject matter. So let me start with this. I saw this in one of the slides yesterday, and most of us in the community might have been aware of this recent development. Anybody knows what this is? I'm sure most of you, right? The skull of Satoshi, right? The skull of Satoshi. Just some background, brief background. This was actually commissioned, this artwork was commissioned by Greenpeace, and it was commissioned to Von Wong. And the Von Wong-led team built this artwork for more or less about 6 months. And the objective of this artwork is to be the symbol of Greenpeace advocacy of advocating and proposing for a code change in Bitcoin, apparently because they view the current proof of work-based consensus algorithm to be, of course, disastrous to the environment. This one I'm borrowing from one of the comics made by a good friend, Lina Saiki. And I also am very happy to see one of her comic strip also featured in yesterday's presentation. So this is funny because this comic strip shows that while groups like Greenpeace initially advocated and thought of it might be a good PR to have an artwork of some sort showing what Bitcoin and how that is harmful for the environment. And I guess it can be the thought bubbles there, right? But it seems that for some reason, we Bitcoiners, maybe we're just so optimistic and we see things differently, that this thing that's supposed to be a symbol and should be viewed as something that represents how bad Bitcoin mining is, actually had a different effect to the community because the community actually liked it. And of course, there's a deeper story, and this is still a developing phenomenon. But as Von Wong would call it, this is a phenomenal accident. Because Greenpeace and Von Wong himself did not expect that the Bitcoin community would consider the skull of Satoshi as something of a symbol that would reflect how the Bitcoin community could actually, or the Bitcoin technology could actually be used for environmental use cases. And some of the problems of the Bitcoin network depends on the view of some environmentalists. So that's something that can be addressed in the long term. So this is a paper I wrote. No need to read the details of this, but just showing you this paper. This is a paper that I submitted as my final output in my ESG class. And I think ESG is a word that somehow irritates some of us in the community. But I feel blessed and lucky to be one of the Bitcoiners who actually had a formal experience of studying the subject matter. And so, it's not, trust me, I wasn't being billed, right? I'm not sure if I orange pilled my professor, but certainly I wasn't green pilled. But what some of my realizations in taking that subject and in writing the paper are reflected in this my presentation today. One is let's highlight the Bitcoin and Bitcoin's economic and security model. I won't emphasize these features anymore because as a community we know this. And the previous speakers have also emphasized these concepts, right? There's no need to discuss proof of work. And if there's anything I need to add is that I want to say that yes, mining is energy intensive and we don't apologize for that. Because we believe it is needed, it is necessary to secure the network. That's the price we pay. It is not a waste. I'm not sure if it was Kanut who said this or it was Saifdin, but he said, yeah, that this isn't really a waste, it's more of a sacrifice, right? The sacrifice we need to ensure the security of a decentralized monetary network. So this security, even this proof of work system is actually a feature, it's not a bug. And of course, yeah, because it's a decentralized network, we need a way to verify transactions in that network and we do it through decentralized verification. And essential to that is the proof of work system. So what is ESG before we proceed forward? ESG stands for everything that sounds good, right? Because what you realize in the ESG circles, there's such a thing as ESG community in the same manner as there is a Bitcoin community. And in the same manner that Bitcoin communities like the orange pill people, right? They also love the green pill people. Okay, so yeah, what really is ESG? You know what? One semester studying ESG, one of my realization also is there's no concrete definition for the term. We are bundling different things. E stands for environment, S stands for social, G stands for governance. But we've always had those things before. And what's really the point of bundling them together? And we have environmental laws, we have environmental policies, we have social laws, social governance, we even do corporate social responsibility, we have labor standards, we have labor relations, and we have corporate governance. So what's the need to bundle all these things now? But nevertheless, we have to deal with this concept because for some reason, the ESG standard and the ESG narrative has been redefining the way the traditional market has been conducting their investments. Okay. True enough, as of 2021, more than $20 billion has been invested already in ESG-related projects. No? Or at least, over 20 US dollar trillion assets under management. And the projection is that this will continue to grow. So let's focus on the E of the ESG. And you'll notice also when you study ESG, there are 3 legs there: environment, social, governance. But most of the discussions really focus on the E, or the environment. Now, in relation to Bitcoin, there are environmental use cases for Bitcoin that can justify sustainable investing. And so, ESG should actually encourage rather than deter the institutional adoption of Bitcoin as a new asset class and Bitcoin as a financial infrastructure. Let me just highlight why did I note there institutional adoption. Well, again, this came from a paper that I wrote in one of my subjects, and our subject actually focuses more on institutions, corporations, and traditional markets. We've heard of nation-state adoption, right? A lot has been said also about how Bitcoin could empower an individual. And yes, nation-state adoption. In what form? Maybe in the adoption of Bitcoin as a legal tender, which is controversial. Or perhaps in the case of governments possibly investing in Bitcoin and holding it as part of their reserve asset. For me personally, I tend to gravitate towards the latter aspect of nation-state adoption because philosophically I have problems with the issue of, with the concept of Bitcoin becoming a legal tender. Nevertheless, here I'm talking about institutional adoption. I'm talking about companies, corporation adopting Bitcoin as part of their corporate treasury reserve, or how the traditional financial service could also go off Bitcoin and support its recognition as a new asset class. And again, as I was saying, despite the buzz about ESG, the narratives about ESG, and despite the fact that the ESG community is irritated when they hear Bitcoin, perhaps in the same manner as when you are speaking before a Bitcoin community, you might tend to also have that issue about ESG, which is understandable. For Bitcoin, this is actually, again, you might reconcile Bitcoin and ESG now. Bearing in mind the different use cases for Bitcoin mining specifically. And let's highlight some of them. Plenty of environmental use cases. One is flare gas capture, load balancing mechanism, and how Bitcoin miners actually use curtailed energy. I think some writers in our space would even use the term buyers of first resort. And I think that term was coined by Nick Carter. So this is just one of the examples of a case study on on flare gas capture. You'll see here how it works. Maybe there's really no need to discuss that in detail now. And this one is a case of how you can use Bitcoin actually as an economic battery storage. Basically, if you have excess capacity, you can use that energy to mine Bitcoin. And by doing so, you're basically acquiring value. Instead of that energy being wasted, that's being deposited as a value. So that's what it means when we say that Bitcoin can be used as an economic battery. Just recent development in Japan, the Tokyo Electric Power Company has already considered using Bitcoin or running also Bitcoin mining to somehow be able to use surplus renewable energy. And again, creating value now. So surplus energy that has up until now been curtailed and wasted. Now the concept of curtailed energy, this is an energy that would have been wasted if it not put for other use, such as Bitcoin mining. And this is Jack Torres. This is one of the key studies in Africa, where some Bitcoin miners are putting their installations in. As you can see here, I don't have I'm not sure where the pointer is. But what you see there, that small hut there, is actually an energy installation that at the same time is being used to mine Bitcoin. And I've heard many ask this question now. How feasible is it to mine Bitcoin in the Philippines, considering how expensive electricity is, or how expensive fossil fuel is? In fact, we don't produce fossil fuel here in the Philippines. This is something that you'll have to import, right? This is an excellent case study because we have plenty of sources for hydropower here in the Philippines. We also have plenty of sources for geothermal power. Geothermal power here in the Philippines. And if you look at this small hat, somehow inspires you that you can similarly set up similar models here in the Philippines or similar installations here in the Philippines. And it might be a question on whether those small installations are sustainable if in terms of operating them. But using Bitcoin miners or also mining Bitcoin could actually help them scale and be able to provide more renewable energy sources in their respective communities. Just some thoughts on energy consumption of Bitcoin. It is a common phenomenon, and we've seen this in other technologies, that when the technology is new, it tends to be energy. It seems to be consumes a lot of energy at first. No? But as we improve the technology, as the technology matures, it becomes more energy efficient. And we can see this happening in Bitcoin as well. And I'm not trying to suggest here that proof of work will become less expensive in terms of its energy consumption. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that in the future, and actually we're experiencing this already, mining Bitcoin will just become more energy efficient. And perhaps one of the best examples of that is, you remember, there were times before when we were still mining Bitcoin through laptops, right? And then Laszlo Hayek's eventually realized that you can use graphic processing units or GPUs to mine Bitcoin. And nobody was doing that except him. And that is exactly why he had thousands of Bitcoin, which he can use until he asked somebody whether, can I buy who wants to buy pizza for me? And I'll pay 10,000 Bitcoins. She actually did many times until he noticed that his supply of Bitcoin is starting to deplete. Right? Now we're not using GPUs anymore. We're using ASICs or application-specific integrated circuits. And what it does is actually to make it more efficient to mine Bitcoin. Because these machines are just focused, they're just specializing in mining Bitcoin. They're not doing anything else. So this is an example of how we make, this is an example of how when the technology matures, it becomes more energy efficient. And as correctly pointed out by Nick Carter and Ross Stevens in their 2021 paper, Bitcoin Net Zero. Yeah, actually, if you compare Bitcoin to other modern conveniences like refrigeration, air conditioning, washing machines, Bitcoin is in fact it even consumes less electricity if you compare it to these other modern conveniences. Right? Think about that. Now, let's talk about regulation. Regulation of Bitcoin mining. I think regulation can help accelerate the adoption of sustainable Bitcoin mining practices. Okay. But what type of regulation are we going to establish or put in place? What kind of framework? There's this Harvard Law professor, his name is Lawrence Lessig. He suggested that actually there are four modes of regulation. Okay. The law or administrative rules, perhaps the law that we're more familiar with when we hear law, or what lawyers would study typically. This is just one type of regulation. And the other types of regulation include markets, social norms, and architecture. And so, when I said earlier that I think Bitcoin mining or regulation is important to ensure sustainable Bitcoin mining practices or to incentivize sustainable Bitcoin mining practices, I'm not actually suggesting that we put in place laws to regulate Bitcoin mining. Or in other countries, there are proposed bills, like in the United States, there is currently a proposed bill to subject Bitcoin mining to some form of tax to somehow discourages Bitcoin mining. In my view, these types of regulation via laws or administrative issuance is suboptimal as compared to regulation through market forces or private ordering. And this is what I refer to, actually, that the concept exists. Lawyers know this concept. Lex mercatorial. It's a Latin term, lex mercatorial. But basically, what is lex mercatorial, we'll discuss in the succeeding slides. But in my view, yes, we should regulate Bitcoin mining. But the regulation of Bitcoin mining should come from industry stakeholders themselves, through private ordering. And even these ESG principles, currently ESG principles are still in their, it is still not developed. There are many questions and controversies, and even the ESG community themselves cannot agree on standards. That's their problem. Although it's a problem that I think in the future they can resolve. We don't know that for sure, but as a community also, we understand that even in the case of Bitcoin, we've been through a lot of uncertainties and problems. But eventually, we are able to fix these problems. No? So whatever we mean by ESG, private order can actually integrate ESG principles as a uniform commercial practice, or again, the term lex mercatoria, among Bitcoin miners and other industry stakeholders. So what is this concept of lex mercatoria? This is the part of the presentation where, if you'll allow me, I will just introduce some legal concepts. So, lex mercatoria refers to customary rules relating to commercial transactions that are widely observed by industry stakeholders, what we refer to as merchants. As I was saying earlier, it's optimal to establish laws based on commercial customs. And the reason for that is because industry stakeholders have a clear sense of their customary practices or uniform practices. And these commercial customs organically evolve from consistent usages. In the Philippines, we have in our law certain provisions that recognize the validity of lex mercatoria, and even court decisions have recognized lex mercatoria as something that could supplement our laws here in the Philippines. So another argument against regulation of Bitcoin through administrative rules, through acts of Congress, is that Bitcoin mining is quite technical, it's novel, it's new. Because of these peculiar aspects of Bitcoin mining, it doesn't seem to be realistic to expect policymakers, politicians, administrative bureaucrats to have the practical understanding of how this thing should be regulated. On the other hand, the community, the industry stakeholders would understand better how their practices should be regulated. And so they are in the best position to accomplish certain goals, including the goal of decarbonizing the Bitcoin mining industry, which, if I can highlight, is still controversial even in the Bitcoin community. Right? Even in the Bitcoin community, we don't agree that we need to decarbonize, right, Bitcoin mining. Perhaps some of us would take that position that this is necessary, right? But there is another side of this that would even argue that there's really no need to decarbonize the Bitcoin mining. ESG is a scam. Climate change is a scam. Things like that. But this is something that we can resolve as a community. And it's better for these types of regulation to come from us rather than these rules or policies to come from lawmakers or administrative agencies. The S in ESG. So that's on environmental. This is so S is social in ESG. Bitcoin as public good, and we emphasize for S, we emphasize public good. We don't even need to agree to the notion of Bitcoin as an alternative decentralized currency. Well, all of us here, all of us, I would bet that all of us who are attending this conference agree and would have a deep conviction about Bitcoin as an alternative financial system. But this is something that outside the halls of this conference room, this is something that is controversial, and that's exactly why we need to orange pill other people, as we would call it. But that doesn't matter. We might not agree, but that's fine, right? What we cannot deny is this. There are many people who are actively using Bitcoin. By some accounts, one is Nick Batia, who would say that there are now more than 100 million. And I guess this is something that we can check. The data on this is something that we can certainly verify. But it's safe to say that there are more than 100 million people now who are actively using Bitcoin. Right? More than 100 million people. Probably more than the population of the Philippines. Especially in countries that are marked by hyperinflation with this dysfunctional financial system or being suppressed by totalitarian regimes. And so if this much is true, then I don't think we need to debate that Bitcoin as a payments network, as a money tagging network, right, would serve a public good. And if it serves a public good, then we should maintain this network, even if it is even if its energy consumption might be high. As I mentioned earlier, we should not see this as wasting energy. We should see this as sacrificing energy to ensure that this public good would serve hundreds of millions of people, if not billions of people globally. So, in conclusion, and this is the point of my paper and also my presentation, is that Bitcoin mining can be aligned with ESG. And again, it doesn't matter what you mean by ESG, what you mean by green. You can align this with Bitcoin mining. They are compatible and they are technically and commercially feasible to practice. I mean, sustainable Bitcoin mining and the use cases, the environmental use cases we've highlighted earlier, would demonstrate that. And in view also of the environmental use cases for Bitcoin, it is not true as some on the green side would say that it is actually not true that Bitcoin poses material environmental risk. And so how do we regulate Bitcoin mining? As I've said earlier, personally, I believe that Bitcoin mining should be regulated. I just don't believe that regulation of Bitcoin mining should come from government agencies, from lawmakers. Applying the principle of lex mercatoria as a policy, I believe that the best way to regulate Bitcoin mining is through private ordering. And so that is my presentation, and thank you again for the opportunity to talk about this subject.
Thank you